You know, there are a lot of big problems happening in our economy right now that a lot of people just don't want to acknowledge and talk about. And one of my viewers, Dale, sent me this story about the huge problems that are happening right now in the RV industry. And RVs are one of the things that are the first things to get sold and the first things that people stop buying when people start running out of money and you fall on hard economic times, because it's a complete toy. No one really needs it. You know, it's just a luxury item to have. Well, there's a company called Lazy Days RV, okay? And they postponed their first quarter financial report for 6 days until they finally spilled the beans, showing that the company suffered massive losses, so much larger than what was being expected. So it sounds like they were kind of trying to hide it for a little while until they could not figure out a way to spin this into a positive, and boom, look what you got. A huge drop in sales. So the company CEO, John North, said that the RV dealer chain lost $22 million in the first quarter of 2024, which is a, wait for this, 723% increase from just 1 year ago, guys. The first quarter losses in 2023 were already starting back then, but in contrast, they only lost $300,000 in the first quarter last year versus 22 million this year. That is unbelievable. Their first quarter revenue for 2024 was 270.6 million, which was also down 8.5% from the first quarter in 2023. And the CEO said that the expectations of increased sales in March and April did not materialize as we hoped. So a lot of people were banking on this so-called fantastic economy. People were hoping to see these big gains in sales as everybody went back out and spent their tax return checks and everything went on as normal, but apparently that didn't happen. I wonder why. Maybe because people are completely running out of money and are spending most of their cash just on survival right now, guys. Even big companies are being misled by this awful government data and reporting that we constantly are hearing, which ends up being false later down the road. Here's another thing the CEO said. He goes, "We have continued to focus on maintaining our healthy inventory position as model year 2025 units arrive, while increasing our efforts to procure more used units to augment our trade-ins and drive additional revenue opportunities." So it sounds like the RV industry is having similar problems to the brand new car industry. You know, in order to sell used cars, in this case used RVs, you need to have a lot of people buying new vehicles so that way they trade in their old ones. So that's something that they're also not seeing happen so much in the RV business. And of course, who's going to be out buying an RV unless they are flush with cash right now? Most people are just trying to figure out, how can I make my budget work for 2024, not, oh, I'm thinking about buying a new RV this year. Another thing the CEO said, "We strongly believe in the earnings power of our store base and look forward to unlocking its full earnings potential as the industry recovers." Well, I think they're going to be waiting a long time for that recovery, guys. People are lucky right now if they can just afford all their normal expenses, let alone going out and buying big expensive RVs. And here's something interesting. They report how the company has about $39 million cash on hand as of May 15th. They also go on to say here how Lazy Days can also access an estimated $45 million in mortgage loan proceeds from refinancing store locations. So their last-ditch effort to maybe stay in business is going to be refinancing their stores and doing a cash-out refinance, just like people who are in financial trouble do as well, guys. Like, the writing is on the wall with this stuff, okay? You're seeing companies talk about publicly that, oh yeah, don't worry, we can access, you know, all these funds and refinance our stores if we need to in order to stay in business. That's absolutely insane. You know, if that's what it takes to stay in business, then you know you're literally on your last leg. You know, once you do that, and if things still don't work out and the sales don't recover, the next thing is bankruptcy and you're folding up shop. That's where it goes from here. I had this idea today to have Lizzie drop me off on the top of the mountain, and then I would work my way down so that way I don't have to walk back up. And this is the reason why, guys, because the views up here are absolutely fantastic. So of course, no one wants to talk about stuff like that. Here's another thing people don't want to talk about, especially in Florida. The people in charge of the Senate and the Congress in Florida, they don't want to talk about the condo problems, okay? And this whole video is not going to be about this because I just made a whole video about it like a week or two ago. But I want to mention a couple of things that are relevant here. The current president of the Senate in Florida is Kathleen Passidomo, and just this past Friday, she ruled out a special legislative session to address problems facing condominium associations and their owners, including the soaring costs. She said that here's what we can do. The condo laws can be addressed in the committee meetings after the November election and during the 2025 regular session. So we all know that the 2025 laws are right around the corner and buildings are supposed to be in compliance with this as of January 1st, but they don't want to talk about this at all in the Florida Senate about what they can do to maybe amend this or to make it more palatable or feasible for condo owners to actually make this happen. They'd rather just wait till the general election is over and completely ignore this until the end of the year or going into next year. In fact, they don't even want to talk about this until the regular sessions continue as of March 4th, 2025. So already almost 3 months into the problems, that's when they want to start discussing it, guys. So they're basically taking the approach of like, let's just leave everything the way it is and let's watch these places flounder and see how many places are in non-compliance as of March next year, and then we'll think about doing something about it. Now, in this woman's defense, she goes, in my view, no law is perfect and sometimes issues arise during implementation and there is often room for improvement. However, the legislative process best serves Floridians when there is an analysis, collaboration, and input from all stakeholders. I believe the upcoming regular sessions following our post-election reorganization provide the best opportunity for this type of dialogue. So it sounds like at least that they're going to be open to maybe making some changes to these new condo laws once they see, the avalanche of buildings that aren't going to be able to comply with this, because I already know that's going to happen because I've reported on this before, that's where it's headed. You have something like 70% of buildings that are not ready for this financially, guys. So it is going to be a huge problem in 2025, and I think they're going to have to amend it in some way by then. We don't know to what extent or what the amendments will be, but you're already seeing some buildings get shut down completely. They're going in and doing these structural reserve studies that they need to do to see what kind of repairs the building needs. And in some cases, those repairs are so severe that the building is no longer fit for occupancy. So they're basically condemning some of these buildings that are trying to comply with the law right now in order to keep people who live there safe. But instead, you become homeless. You got nowhere to live. Now, here's another thing that the Senate president said. She understands the financial constraints of seniors, young families, and other people who can't afford increased association fees and assessments, as well as the anger and frustration of condo owners who believe they've been misled and their resources mismanaged. But she said the priority is public safety. So ultimately, they're probably going to keep condemning buildings that are unfit for habitation. I have no doubt about that after hearing this statement. So you can expect, guys, you live in a Florida condo right now that there's some major problems with, you can expect an eviction coming sooner than later, most likely. There are so many different ways that our data is being compromised these days that it's pretty much impossible to trace it. You've made purchases from hundreds of different websites over the years that collect your data, and unfortunately, unless you close down all those accounts, a lot of that data ends up being sold to data brokers. And that's why today's video is sponsored by Delete Me. Delete Me is a hands-free subscription service that will remove your personal information that's being sold online. Delete Me's privacy experts remove you from hundreds of data brokers all year long. So they'll remove information like your phone number, your address, and they make regular removal requests on your behalf on an ongoing basis. I decided to sign up for Delete Me as well, and you guys can see how much of my own personal information has been removed here from the internet. So if you value your information and your privacy like I do, I highly recommend you sign up for Delete Me. Make sure you get 20% off your Delete Me subscription by joining today using my link down in the description below at joindeleteme.com/boardinarrow. Or you can use the QR code on the screen, just snap a picture of it and sign up for Delete Me today. You know, something I've been thinking about since I'm affected by this personally is, you know, how come they don't pass a law where if you live in a building that has voted down reserves, what they should do is they should go 30 years back in time, take a look at all the people who used to own units there and go back and retroactively collect assessments from them. You know, why do only the current owners have to pay for this? You know, you have buildings that are anywhere between, you know, 30, 40, 60, 70 years old in many cases that have voted down reserves for at least probably 90% of those years. How come the old owners, the people who, you know, bought these places for pennies and sold them for big profits, don't have to pay their fair share? They should be tracking these people down with title records and making them pay a percentage of these increased costs to maintain or restore these buildings, because after all, they were the ones who got to benefit from living in this brand new building, right? You buy a brand new building in the early 90s, mid 80s, whatever, and you don't have to pay high HOA fees. There's no special assessments because everything is brand new. The price you pay for the property is a fraction of what people pay today. You never have to pay any increased costs, and then you go ahead and sell it 30 years later to somebody today who now has to pay an absolute fortune because you didn't. So they should be retroactively going back and taking money from people that own these units in the past. I think it's the only fair way, guys. Now, I understand that people today should know what they're getting themselves into, but unfortunately a lot of people still don't. You know, that's why I make these videos on YouTube and, you know, help people understand the magnitude of these problems and what you could be facing. But not everyone sees these videos, and they get lied to by real estate agents and lenders just to close deals, and they end up buying a place that they regret in the end. She even says here that costs associated with ongoing maintenance and repairs are supposed to be shared among owners, in addition to setting aside significant savings for long-term structural needs over time. Well, just like I said, a lot of these people who own these units in the past didn't do that. They didn't set aside the money needed over time to make these repairs. So they should be punished, right? They should be responsible for part of these assessments and part of these repair costs that people now have. I think it's the right thing to do, and it's really the only thing that makes any sense, guys. And there should be some sort of a statute of limitations on this, of course. Like, you can't go back to the beginning of time if the building's, you know, 70 years old, but you could probably go at least 30 years back in time and collect money from people like that. I don't know, tell me what you guys think about this idea, because I don't see how it's right for people today that are just entering into a building. You just buy one today, let's say, you know, how is it fair that you are paying for the brunt of all the costs of maintenance that people didn't do over the years? And you could say, well, it's like that with houses, Michael, which is true, but when you buy a house, you know, you can get inspections done and things to figure out what's going on with the house and have a clearer idea of the problems you might be facing, versus if you're buying in a condo and it hasn't had one of these structural reserve studies done yet, like many of them haven't, then you really have no idea what you're getting yourself into. You know, just getting an inspection done on the unit itself isn't really good enough anymore. You know, you need to understand what is the integrity of the entire building like now in order to make an educated decision on buying. And if you don't know what that is, I'm telling you guys, you shouldn't buy, okay? If you're looking at a condo today in 2024 and they have not had one of these structural reserve studies done yet, and they don't have a number for you right now of what the reserve payments are gonna have to be moving forward and the scope of work that has to be done on these buildings, just move on. Find something else. You will thank me later, because this is a massive problem for anyone looking to buy right now. I don't know, let me know what you guys think about my idea. You know, let me know if you think that people who used to own these units and never paid, you know, any extra and special assessments, or never saw big increases in their HOA fees, should have to pay up their fair share. But these are all things no one wants to talk about. The Florida Senate, they don't want to talk about it until after the election. Just, yeah, let it be. let people get condemned, whatever. We don't care. We got more important things to worry about right now, like getting reelected. Just remember that, guys. Now, Scott sent me this Reddit story about an unethical realtor. And I'm not going to read the whole story for you guys. I'll basically summarize what it is. But basically, this woman and her husband were looking for a home for about 5 months, and they looked at dozens of homes, and there are 2 of them only after all this time that they're interested in making an offer on, okay? And these properties have been sitting on the market for quite some time, obviously, if they started looking 5 months ago, and they still haven't sold. And they've both seen some major price reductions, and basically they're saying that every time they ask their real estate agent to make a formal offer on these properties, that she's refusing to do so because she claims she had a conversation with the listing agent, and they say, no, we're not taking any offers below $550K, for example, and they want to offer like $460, which is a lowball offer, don't get me wrong, but hey, you're in the business of trying to sell houses. If you want to get one sold, you need to make an offer, right? The owner can sit there and refuse a verbal offer all day long, or the listing agent can tell you that they won't accept it, but having the actual offer in hand could change their mind. Typically, the realtor will say something like, I spoke to the seller's agent and they said that the client won't accept any offers less than $550K. Well, why don't you just submit it? So these people are saying, is it unethical for a real estate agent to do this? Can they, just claim that they talked to the seller's agent and said that they won't accept anything, and that works? Should we be hiring a new agent? And the answer is absolutely, you should be hiring a new agent, guys. You have no idea how many bogus offers I wrote, just to satisfy clients in the past. You have these same conversations with the listing agent when you're representing the buyer, and there's no way on earth that offer is going to get accepted, but to appease the buyer, you submit it anyways. And realtors don't want to do this because it's extra work, right? We're the ones that have to fill out the contract. It takes time to do that. You got to get signatures done, which is much easier today than it used to be. But now everything is e-signature, whereas when I started, e-signature wasn't even a thing. You had to meet up with people and get it signed in writing still. So yeah, if you come across a real estate agent like this that's representing you as the buyer and they don't want to write offers on your behalf, even if the offer might sound ridiculous to them, you need to find somebody else, guys, because first of all, they could be lying to you. You don't even know if what they're saying is true or not, because maybe they're just too lazy to write up the offer and do the extra work, right? But the other thing is, the only way to ever know for sure if an offer will be accepted is if you submit one. Having a verbal offer and having a real offer, a real contract in front of a seller is not the same thing, especially when people are motivated. They say that these sellers supposedly are motivated because they've dropped the price tremendously already on these listings and they're still available. And the buyers even confirmed by talking to the seller at the house that they're motivated. So it doesn't hurt to send an offer that could be accepted by a motivated seller. You have nothing to lose. The worst thing that can happen is they just turn it down and say no. So just like in my video the other day when I gave you guys a bunch of advice on how to pick a real estate agent and all of this, there's another tip for you. If they don't want to write offers for you, even if they seem silly or ridiculous, find somebody else, because you never know if one of those offers could end up being accepted. It says this house behind me is a coming soon listing, so I'm sure it's going to be multi-millions of dollars being up here on the mountaintop. Here's something else for you. Zillow said that they more than doubled their mortgage originations in the second quarter of this year, trying to have a very bullish real estate story come out, making the housing market look like it's on fire still, right? They said that their second quarter originations were $759 million versus the $340 million in the second quarter of 2023, which I will say that is a substantial improvement. Just like the RV story in the beginning, shows just how bad that business is doing. This can make it look like the mortgage industry is doing very well, particularly for Zillow. But we need to look more into the details here, because they said even though things are going well in our mortgage division, those positives are easily outweighed by the lower marketplace revenue. So what the marketplace revenue is when you go on Zillow and you look at any listing, you can do it right now, and you'll see they'll show different agents that you can get in touch with, okay? It's not just one. And guess what? None of those agents are the listing agent of the property. Those are what they call premier agents. And Zillow charges those agents to appear on any given listing, and they will give that lead not only to them, but maybe multiple agents in some cases, and it becomes a race to the bottom of whoever calls that client first and tries to lock them down in some sort of commitment, right? I did this before as an agent. It's a complete waste of money. Never sold a single property from it. Some people have had massive success with it. I think it depends on the market. You know, Miami, the traditional tools and things that kind of work in even places like here in California, they don't work, guys. You have to do different things in Miami to get homes sold and get clients. But that marketplace revenue is down substantially, offsetting that gain from the increase in mortgage originations, and that's because real estate agents literally can't afford to keep paying for these leads because they're not closing the deals, guys. But here's some of the details that are not on the front page of this story. One of them is that in the second quarter, the same time they had this big uptick in mortgage originations, the Zillow group as a whole, Zillow as a corporation, still had a net loss of $17 million, down from $35 million the prior year. So last year, second quarter, they lost $35 million. This year, second quarter, they lost $17 million. Even though they're bringing in all this money, they're still in the red. You know, their business is not operating in the black right now. So that's why I said you need to look at all of the details with this. Check it out. There's a baby deer right here. If you guys can see that. There he is. And there's actually a bunch of them. I know people around here hate them because they eat up your whole yard. Now here's another thing to think about from this story that they don't mention at all, right? Their mortgage originations are up, but they don't say where all that revenue is coming from, like what kind of loans are generating those higher origination amounts. Well, don't forget, guys, Zillow offers 1% down mortgages, you know, as of about a year ago. So a lot of people are able to get into a home for practically no money down. And I wonder if those are the people that are taking on more of these loans right now as housing becomes more unaffordable. They don't mention that. So they want you to believe, in general, that business is going well for Zillow, even though the company as a whole is still losing money quarter after quarter. But sometimes people read these stories and say, wow, this is great. You know, maybe the housing market's starting to recover, because if Zillow is seeing this massive uptick in loan originations, then things must be recovering. But that's not the full story. And that's why you watch channels like mine to give you the full story. Now, one interesting comment that came up in one of my recent real estate videos was, what's going to keep BlackRock and other banks from buying up all this real estate? Because we're seeing inventory tick up right now, and it's projected to continue to tick up as the years go on, as demand falls and the supply increases, okay? So what's to stop BlackRock and other banks from buying up this real estate? This person meant to say, wasn't there a huge shadow market from the 07 and 08 crisis? The banks and BlackRock started buying up all the foreclosures to shrink the supply and keep the market high. Well, there's only some truth to that, guys. Yes, there was shadow inventory back then that ended up getting sold to these big Wall Street buyers. But you got to understand, they only bought a very small amount of these homes. We're talking like maybe 5% of the supply, nowhere near what actually became available back then. Because this was kind of the beginning of when Wall Street and the institutional buyers started entering the market. That's when they kind of came in and started buying up American single-family homes and turning them into rentals, because there was so many of them available at such great deals. However, anybody who remembers this time frame, that definitely was not enough to keep the market high, because we saw home prices crash on a national basis about 30%, and some markets where I live in, like in Miami and Las Vegas, went down by 50%. So yeah, it wasn't enough to keep the markets high at all. If you want to know what's going to stop these corporations from buying up all the real estate once we get a deluge of inventory again this time around, well, the short answer is nothing. You know, we don't have any government regulations against this, so I can see why a lot of people would be concerned about that. But one thing you have to understand is these institutional buyers are not going to be jumping in to buy these homes today that come up at these prices. And the simple answer is because it's no longer a good investment. You know, you're not going to be buying houses that they can't turn a profit on. The prices on these homes are going to have to come down substantially in order to get these institutional investors back in the game. And that's when you're going to see the market turn around. That's when you're going to see more of those guys buying and more regular people jump in and realize, hey, now's once again a good time to buy. And we're definitely not there yet. When we reach that point, I'll be sure to let you all know. Here's also another thing to show you guys how much the real estate industry is suffering right now. You know, the federal government is going through leaps and bounds in order to keep people in their homes that cannot pay the bills, guys. And instead of having moratoriums on the mortgage, now they're just doing all these crazy things to get people who can't pay to keep their house somehow, to keep them in the house. This is something that Jonathan sent me. And what it is, it's the Single Family Housing Guaranteed Loan Program. They're proposing changes to the use of special servicing options for non-performing loans and adjusting the mortgage recovery advance. So what they're trying to do is keep people in the house who aren't paying. That's what this means. And here's some of the highlights from their most recent proposal. They have to give them a final offer before a pre-foreclosure happens. They also say when processing a loan modification, servicers may extend the term in 1 month increments up to a maximum of 480 months until the target payment reduction has been achieved, guys. So they can extend your loan almost into infinity to make it as affordable as possible. That's what they're doing. This is how you get the 40 and 50-year mortgage with things like this right here. And then something that they give people is called the mortgage recovery advance. They'll basically give you money to pay your mortgage now that ends up being a lien on your house later on that must be repaid when you sell it. A borrower now may receive multiple MRAs as long as the cumulative amount for the MRAs is less than or equal to 30% of the unpaid principal balance at the time of default. Like, these guys are not letting it crash, guys, at least not yet. They're holding it up till the election beautifully, okay? They're doing everything to keep these people who aren't paying in their houses. And who knows how many millions of people are getting these benefits right now to continue staying in their house and not working for free. You know, just like we talked about in yesterday's video with the crazy electric bills and that stuff being subsidized by people who actually pay their bills, this is the same thing that's happening with housing now. You know, did we vote for this? No. Did anybody say in this country that we wanted this? No. Yet all of our tax dollars are going towards things like this now. And my fear is that no matter what happens with this next election cycle, is these problems are just going to continue to exponentially blow up. You know, this is not going to go away. These problems are just going to continue getting worse regardless of who gets elected, and that's the most frightening thing if you ask me. But anyways, I appreciate everybody who contributed to this video. It was a lot of help, and if you enjoyed it, please make sure to subscribe to the channel. And if you don't want to wait for my next video to come out, check out this one on the screen right over here, and I'll see you in the next one.